Thank you very much. Thank you very much for the invitation. I remain seated as the organizers insisted on us to remain seated, and as a German, of course, I stick to the rule. I have to make another disclaimer. I'm a representative of the economics ministry, and therefore I'm speaking for the economics ministry and not for the German government. I will give you, however, an indication what I think is the opinion of the German government, especially from my colleagues from the finance ministry. Together, we are responsible for European economic policy and therefore also for Greece. Of course, Mr. Schäuble in the ECOFIN and in the Eurogroup, he's the representative, and we don't always manage to convince him of our opinion. But let me start with a few remarks on the topic and on the relationship between debt and growth from a scientific perspective, and then I will quickly move on to a more political area. The literature, of course, mentioned by the minister, of course, starting with Kenneth and Rogoff, suggests that there is a certain relation between debt and growth. Of course, the study is very much disputed, as you know. More recently, there have been studies by the ECB, the European Central Bank, which show that there probably is a relationship as well. A relationship showing that if public debt is low, then there's a positive relationship, because if you spend it, you can generate more growth. Up to a rate of 70%, probably there is no relationship, and from 70% onwards, then there's a negative relationship, so there will be less growth if there's more debt. Of course, all those studies, can be disputed, and they are disputed, and that's something economists can do at length. I don't want to go into any detail. I think from intuition, there is a certain relationship, but we shouldn't overemphasize this relationship. There is no absolute threshold, as discussed sometimes by journalists, saying like more than 90% is unsustainable and you cannot generate any more growth. I don't think that this is the way forward. However, of course, there is, as I said, there is some relationship, and what is very important, I think, is the general framework, the framework conditions, and of course, the outlook. If the outlook is rather positive concerning debt, but also growth, or if the outlook is rather negative. Because we see, if you look, Italy has lived for years and years with 130% of debt without any problems, Japan and so on. That is, it can be done, but of course, the framework conditions have to be right. And if I may say, this discussion once again, from my taste, was centered a little bit too much on debt. I understand that for Greece it's an issue, and definitely it is an issue. 180% is a lot, and it's probably too much. But still, we should talk, and I would like to talk a little bit more about growth. Because I do think that it is possible, and we should make it possible to generate growth even when there is a high debt. And I think this, it seems crucial for me. Back in 2015, when I talked for the first time with Yanis Varoufakis and Tsakalotos, when he wasn't a finance minister yet, and we talked about, they talked an hour about debt and thresholds and haircuts and so on. And they didn't talk about growth. And at some point I said, okay, I understand your preoccupation, but you really need to start to talk about growth and investment. You really start to come up with this famous growth plan that was mentioned very often. I'm very happy that the Greek government now seems to have understand that. Minister Papadimitriou talked about it as well, and I think this realization is starting to be more and more widespread. But I really would like to emphasize that it is very important to talk about growth and to realize as well that growth can be reached even in Greece. And Greece has done a tremendous job. You have really put through a reform agenda which can be criticized, of course, in some areas. And I can totally understand that. And it came at high cost. We've lost 25% of GDP. Poverty rates have risen dramatically to almost 50%. Yes, we know that. On the other hand, now we see some growth. We see a primary surplus. And we see positive foreign trade current account agenda. So there have been positive developments. And now we have to try to strengthen those positive developments. And that means we have to establish a right framework for growth. And there are quite a few important aspects for growth. Of course, it's about structures. Some were mentioned by the last speaker. It is really of very, very high importance to generate a framework for private business, a favorable framework for private business. 90% of the investments are made by private business, not by the state, 90%. So you need to create favorable framework conditions. And when I was in Greece last time with Minister Gabriel at the time, and we had brought a delegation of German small and medium enterprises. And they all want to do business in Greece because there are a lot of opportunities here. It's a really great country. But still, there are structural problems. And one should address them. And obviously, it's always difficult for a German to, and I'm not lecturing you, but I tell you what those businessmen tell me. And of course, it's about the judicial system, which is really not efficient. And that was mentioned earlier on in a talk as well. You really need to or keep on reforming that. And of course, it's about the public service as well. I'm not going into numbers, if it's too big or too small. Probably it's rather too big, but it should be efficient. That is important. It has to be efficient. And you need to do a lot. And then, of course, it's about creating the right framework conditions for investments, to public investments, to come to the ground. That is about structures. Even in Germany, we are not a country with a huge investment quota. We are about average. We have about 20.5% of GDP investment, but it's kind of okay, but it's below OECD average, and it's below where we want to be. China has 40% investments. And Greece has only 10%. So there is certainly something we need to work on. But you need to create the right conditions. In Germany, we don't have the right conditions to get all the money that the state provides on the ground. And I think here we need to become better in Germany and in Greece. We need to get those investments in areas, obviously, where we can generate and enhance potential growth. And of course, that is in infrastructure, in education, and in energy, probably, in the case of Greece, at least. But that means, once again, you need to have the structures that are reliable. And there's one word which is really important, and that is trust. You need to generate trust. And we do realize that the government has made efforts to come up with a better framework. There has been an investment law granting more stable structures for companies investing here. But I think this needs to be continued. And for us, coming from the economics ministry, I think a lot about growth and productivity and total factor productivity and how can we enhance potential growth. Because we have, and I see that we need a toolkit actually to come up with. Like sometimes when I talk to my colleagues from the finance ministry, I think they only have one tool, the hammer, and therefore they only see nails everywhere to hammer. And that is not the way forward. But as well in Greece here, I don't know, maybe it's because of you feel the pressure, and I totally admit that we Germans might be to blame for it as well. But you should not only talk about debt and about haircuts and about debt sustainability. You should also talk about growth. And let me get a little bit more concrete on the propositions made here. And I know we are talking a lot to the Greek government as well, to President Tsipras and his people. And obviously, they tell us as well, 3%, 3.5% primary surplus is not possible. Get rid of it. And over 10 years. And up to a point, I have some sympathy for that. I think 10 years is definitely too long. That is definitely not sustainable. But on the other hand, my colleagues from the finance ministry tell me, and yeah, you agreed in the MOU to a primary surplus of 3.5% in the medium term, and the medium term is understood as 10 years. I think we should actually stop doing too many calculations. We have done all the calculations as well, like the same. They are a bit different sometimes, but in general they are more the same. And we need those, as of course, to rely on. But then again, it's about politics. And politics means that we need to move on. And I'm very happy that now the stalemate seems to have overcome. Now the institutions, the second review is underway. They are back in Greece. And there seems to be more flexibility on the IMF side, who accepts that the primary surplus of 3% for some years can be reached. And frankly, for some years it can be reached. It's not something impossible, and it has been shown. Not for 10 years, but for a certain time. And there is more flexibility, I think, from the German side, from Schäuble's side, and we have tried to push him there as well a little bit concerning the period of time where this primary surplus has to be reached. And there is more flexibility as well from the Greek side, because it will be necessary, I'm afraid, that in certain areas, especially in the tax area, there need to be more reforms. Reforms which are, if I understand correctly, structurally right. But of course, if you implement them, it will amount to less buying power of the Greek people, and that will be problematic. So I see that it's a very fragile situation, but there is really some dynamic in the situation. I think we can move on if all sides show some flexibility, and I have really the feeling that there is this flexibility and this move forward. Once again, trust. I would like to say something I've already said yesterday on a panel, and I know that this won't be popular in this audience, but I think it's very important. It's about trust, because people like me and people who want to see to move on with the second review and with the whole process, and want to see growth coming back, want to see that growth, that the population of Greece, who has suffered a lot, actually will reap some benefits, then you need to generate a climate of trust. And what was really not helpful was this Christmas present, sorry to say that, Minister, but of the 13th pension allowance, which is understandable from a political point of view. Yes, I understand it. But frankly, I was talking about growth. I was talking to the Schäuble people. I was saying, listen, the Greeks, they have done a great deal. They have really suffered a lot. Let's give them some more leeway, because we can trust them. Now they have understood that it's about growth, and it's about investments, and not only, even if that is understandable, because there was, I've mentioned that, a lot of sufferance, and the poverty rate has increased dramatically. But still, it's about investment and growth. And then you do something like that without talking to the institutions. That makes it the job for people like me so much more difficult. So it's really, I mean, if you repeat something like that, then it really will be really, really difficult. And so I can only urge all of us to work together, because it's, I mean, at the end of the day, the institutions and the other countries in Europe have helped a great deal. That is true. On the other hand, you have done a lot, and you have really, your reform agenda is fantastic. Of course, coming from a very, very low level. So we need to keep on working together, and we have to make sure that it's not that this mistrust, there's a lot of mistrust, and that is not good. It's not helpful. Now, in the situation with Trump and Turkey and so on, we really, in Europe and in the Eurozone, we have to work together to maintain the European values and to maintain this positive economic dynamic present in Europe, because in spite of all the problems we see, there is a positive economic dynamic. In the whole of the Eurozone, there was growth, even Greece, and we have to move on and keep on. So really,
Dr. Steinberg,
yeah.
I have to show you a yellow card. You have 2 more minutes. Thank you.
I'm about to finish. I was about to finish with an emotional end note. So about cooperation and working together and trust. And it's really it's about that. And sometimes my fear is there's too much emphasis and of the debt problems and the haircuts and so on, and too little on this growth agenda. And I always said that. I told Varoufakis in the first conversation we had, I said to him, okay, I understand that, but please don't only talk about haircuts and about debt and sustainability, because at the moment it is no problem. It will be a problem, yes, and we will find a solution. But please have a holistic approach that is a growth-friendly approach, and therefore you need to undertake structural reforms in many areas, like Germany, by the way, as well. We still need to undertake structural reforms, which are not only painful. It's about the tax system, it's about the judicial system, and it's about the public sector. And if we work together, if you keep on reforming, I'm very confident that the positive dynamic we see, in spite of all the problems, that we keep on, and that Greece can be, of course, that's what we want, be maintained in the Eurozone, and even see a positive economic and social development. Thank you very much.